Book of Psalms is one of the most enduring works for Christians and Jews that is referenced constantly and used throughout its history. And it's fascinating to see what can we gain by studying the Book of Psalms in the original language of Hebrew. We have an excellent guest with us today, Dr. Pete Myers, who has done one of the most in-depth looks at 40 of the chapters of Psalms, and we're really excited to get to talk with him today. I have Nathan, of course, my co-host, along with me. Pete, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Great to be here, Matthew. Nathan, thank you for having me.
Yeah, good to have you.
So the first question I just want to ask you before we dive in specifically to your work that you've done, this Hebrew Reader for the Psalms, an excellent book, by the way, we love going through. I wanted to ask you about the Psalms in general. Why choose this book for a reader? Why do you think the Book of Psalms has been so popular and powerful for Jews and Christians for so long?
That's a really good question. I've been thinking about it for the last week, and it's not just popular among Jews and Christians. That's the interesting thing about the Psalms. This semester, I'm teaching Introduction to the Old Testament, and as part of that, I'm doing a lecture on the reception history of the Old Testament. And it was a great 90s rap tune is "Gangsta's Paradise" by Coolio. And he starts off by with those words. I walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah, that's good.
We'll look around, whatever. And I saw an interview with Coolio afterwards. I saw an interview where he was talking about, someone was asking him, so what's the meaning of this? Is it about gang culture and stuff like that? Obviously, because it's called Gangsta's Paradise. He said, actually, he was really thinking about the fact that everyone in their situation, no matter where they are, they're living in difficult times, in things that are hard to kind of live with. And it feels like, in your own way, there's a different kind of metaphor for different people, that everyone's living in a gangster's paradise because there's just injustice all around us, And I was like, wow, that's really deep, And what I just think it's interesting that he decided to use, he didn't say this explicitly, but I think this is why he used the text of the Psalm to try and sort of make that kind of broader connection outside of his subject matter to kind of connect to something bigger. The Psalms, as an ancient collection of texts, whether you have a faith or not, just as an ancient collection of texts, they touch on things that are core to what it means to be human. There's all sorts of feelings and emotions expressed. And for those of us who do have faith, here we have a model of how to express all of those different feelings in a faithful way, which is, really amazing. And there's all sorts of other ways that the Psalms have impacted different types of culture. So Islamic thought and poetry, 70s disco music, Boney M. Actually, you can actually sing the Hebrew of that psalm to the tune of "By the Rivers of Babylon" by Boney M. So I'd encourage you to try that out.
Fascinating. Didn't know this.
You're a Hebrist, so that's what I think about why they have such longevity.
Interesting. Do you find that your students, this is a little off track, but because you mentioned sort of receptions Geschichte, right? This reception history study, do you find students really enjoy this, sort of diving into how the text has been received in other cultures, other places, other times?
Yeah, great question. So I've introduced this as a new lecture this semester.
Okay.
So obviously, so I'm wearing an Ethiopian shirt, but obviously I'm not Ethiopian. I'm from the UK. And so I work cross-culturally, and I'm always trying to think, how do I try and help students, help make the connection between what we're reading and their culture, which is, alien to my culture. So it's quite an interesting kind of like slightly different thing to what many lecturers I think are doing. At the same time, I think because of that, I both don't understand some things, but also I see some things more clearly than I would.
Interesting.
And what I've wanted to do is contextualize for the students I'm speaking to the views that they have and the experience they have of the Bible, help them see how that fits in with a broader narrative of the history of other human beings, of other Christians, of other Protestant and evangelical Christians, which is most of the students I teach, that's their background. So that I think the more rooted you are in that kind of historical sense of where things come from, the more able you are to kind of see your own kind of cultural approach to the text that you're kind of coming to and how it is that you're hearing it. Whether the students find that interesting or not, I think really comes down to how well I prepare.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the fascinating things is that here in Ethiopia, what's perceived to be secular music is considered to be really sinful. So a Christian does not listen to secular music, and so.
So no Coolio then, yeah. In that sense,
well,
yeah.
I am going to play them some Coolio. I'm going to play them because that's part of the reception of the Old Testament.
Right.
You see what I mean? Like, so how do you? And I'm going to ask them, how do you process that? You know, what do you do with that? I mean, at what point is music secular or not secular? Now, this is a very Ethiopian discussion, you know, but these kind of questions, I think, emerge for your listeners and watchers who are in Australia or the UK or the USA as well.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. I think that's excellent. So, you know, another question that we had then, your reader, it presents the Hebrew text from, of course, the two most important manuscripts that we have of the Hebrew Bible, the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex. What are these codices, and why do you do something unique in choosing the Aleppo Codex as the base text? I know you explained this somewhat in the book, but we'd love for our listeners to hear why you both decided to go this direction with it.
Yeah, I'm really excited you asked this question, and I'm going to give you an answer, and then you can stop me if you
get too nerdy.
If we get too nerdy, because I just love this is the kind of stuff I really love. You know, I mean, the basic summary is the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex are two books that were written and had all the marks put on them, which I'll come to in a moment, around the 10th, 11th century AD. And what they have within them is the entire text of the Old Testament as written in the consonants, which is the ancient way of writing the Hebrew Bible. But also on top of those consonants are all sorts of little dots and dashes and marks. And what those dots and dashes and marks do is they're a kind of written record of the oral tradition that the Jews of that time had inherited. Now, the reason why I think that's really exciting is that oral tradition. I'm going to say something now that some people will disagree with, but it's like many, many times I say to my students, that's okay. You can have your view on something. I'll have God's view, and then that's fine. There was a.
That's good.
I get away with that joke once in a lecture series. So the Hebrew scriptures kind of existed as a set of different scrolls that were written just in the consonantal text, and we actually have some copies of those written in that way from way back, before the time of Jesus even. But in the temple and then in synagogues as well that existed, there was a tradition of reading that text. And so that's what I mean by an oral tradition. So there was a written tradition and an oral tradition that existed at the same time. And gradually over many centuries, some very, very faithful Jews who wanted to retain that oral tradition and make sure that it didn't get lost, developed a system for writing it down. But because they really cared about the written consonantal text, because the Hebrew Bible was written in consonants, because they cared about every letter, they didn't want to change any letters. So they didn't want to add in vowel letters or anything. So what they did was they developed this system so they could add stuff on top of or over or underneath the consonants. So they could respect the written word, which they considered to be sacred, while also recording this oral tradition, which they also considered to be sacred in as faithful way as they could. Now, this system took 300, 400, 500 years to develop, and it kind of reached its academic height, the kind of, the kind of best, most pure developed point it ever did around the 10th, 11th centuries AD in a place called Tiberias. And the scribes there, or what we call the Masoretes, the Jewish Masoretes who are working, they very faithfully recorded down this oral tradition as carefully as they could. And the best examples we have of it are the Aleppo and the Leningrad Codices. And they're different to scrolls, because scrolls you kind of, you roll up like this and then you can unroll them to kind of see the text. Codex was a new invention that happened a few hundred years earlier than this. And it allows you to create what's basically a book. So you can now put the whole Hebrew Bible in one place. And so they were able to record it all. The Leningrad Codex is the standard text of the Hebrew Bible that's used everywhere. So if you open any electronic software that has the Hebrew text in it, that Hebrew text will have been copied into the computer from originally some point in the past from the Leningrad Codex. The Aleppo Codex is a lot less accessible to people, even though Maimonides, or Maimonides, or however you pronounce his name, who was a medieval Jewish scholar, said that the Aleppo Codex was probably the most accurate codex in existence.
Yeah.
Sadly, unfortunately, the Aleppo Codex was not widely available to scholars until after the 1940s, when it got considerably broken. So there are now parts missing from the Aleppo Codex, which is really sad and frustrating. What our book does is it brings a little bit of the Aleppo Codex to readers in a way that they wouldn't be able to get in other places.
Yeah, I'm so glad to see that you guys have done this, because I remember first learning about the Aleppo Codex and how it's just a more precise type of document. Obviously, we don't have all of it, and so we default to the Leningrad. But it was interesting. Just the other week, there was a student who asked, "Well, why doesn't someone maybe just use the Aleppo for what we have and then go off the Leningrad?" And I said, "Well, good news. I just received a book by a group of scholars who are doing that very thing." And I find it fascinating. One thing, if I remember right, one of the things you did in this book is you actually went through and looked at every single accent, tamim difference between both manuscripts, present them both. You've already kind of touched on this, but I wonder if you can help our listeners understand how detailed of a work this is to do. I mean, how closely you're reading the text. And is there anything you walked away from in terms of your learning and your experiencing of these Psalms by looking so closely at these things that denote the vowels, as well as, other types of things with these accent marks?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that question. So it's pretty detailed work. So what I did for this book was I have pictures of the Aleppo Codex. Actually, I have two sets of pictures that I've managed to acquire. One of them was taken a few decades ago, and the other set was taken more recently. And actually, as I was looking very carefully at them, I noticed there's differences. So something's happened. Something's happened to the Aleppo Codex between the 80s and the early 2000s. And I actually have kind of at the back of my mind, I've been talking to Jonathan about this, a long-term project one day to try and get a bunch of students together to look at the pictures that were taken earlier and the pictures that were taken later, and see if they can map or record all the changes that have occurred, like what's going on. I don't know whether it's just dirt or there's further degradation on the Aleppo. I don't know what it is or why that's happening. Anyway, I saw places. Anyway, this is that, I've not really answered your question directly. So the So what I did was I looked at pictures of the Aleppo Codex, and then from there I just transcribed the consonantal text and all of the marks for both the vowels and what we call the cantillation, which are the marks of how you should sing the text. And I transcribed them all into my computer from those the pictures. Then I compared it to the electronic texts that exist, that are widely available, and to the printed text VHS, and which is itself originally from the Leningrad Codex. And when I saw differences, I then checked almost everywhere again, the Leningrad Codex myself. Sorry, I didn't check the Leningrad Codex. I checked pictures of the Leningrad Codex. I've never been to St. Peter.
Yeah.
So I ended up checking. I just checked every psalm that's there. I checked pictures of the Aleppo Codex and pictures of the Leningrad Codex, and just checked every single mark. And then when I'd finished that, much later down the line, Jonathan had a look at it, and some of the guys in the Hendrickson office very kindly looked at it and came back and sort of said, "Pete, we think you're wrong here." And that was very exciting. That was very exciting. Yeah. And I just tried to record every difference that existed, that I could see, and we almost every difference is noted in our apparatus. There's only one type of difference we didn't note. Otherwise the book would be twice as big. Literally one type of which was very different. That's Raphae, which is an accent that many watchers or listeners of this will probably never have come across before, because Raphae is not transcribed usually in the electronic text or the printed text. So we decided to transcribe it, and that was where we noticed there was massive differences in Raphae between Aleppo and Leningrad. I have these differences recorded on my computer, and one day I'm going to do something with them, I guess. So some things I noticed that were quite interesting were, so there's problems that the Masoretes had in how do we help the reader understand how to pronounce this particular feature properly. And sometimes the pointer of Leningrad had a different solution to the pointer of Aleppo. So one example is when there is a vocalic Shiva. Now, again, some people believe that there is no such thing as a vocalic Shiva, and those people are free to be wrong. That's absolutely fine. There is vocalic Shiva, and usually in Leningrad, the way that that's indicated is that there is what's called a Gaia, or in many textbooks is called a meteg mark beforehand. And that tells you that the next Shiva should be pronounced. But in the Aleppo Codex, no matter what the consonant was, almost always the Shiva is just marked as compound, a compound Shiva. So again, if you know any Hebrew, you'll know what I'm talking about. Usually the Shiva that's underneath a guttural consonant like or they're marked with a compound Shiva. So there's two dots with another sign next to it to say how it should be pronounced. And another little feature which was completely new to me was in all the textbooks you get taught about three types of compound Shiva. So there's kametz, patach, and segol Shiva. Basically, they've got different names, but don't worry about that. So there's three different ways of pronouncing the Shiva. In the Aleppo Codex, in two of our psalms that are in our book, there is a hirek written next to a Shiva. So it's a different type of compound Shiva. And when I first came across this, I was just like, so I was like, is this like, so and you spend some time looking at the screen, making it bigger, is this a dead fly, or like what's kind of going on there? And it actually is a hirek, and there's reasons at the time as to why that might have been pronounced, and that's quite interesting. So does that reflect a slightly different tradition of how they were pronouncing the text to what's going on in Leningrad? So it's not just a different solution to the same problem. There might be slight differences in the pronunciation tradition. And actually, there are some places between Aleppo and Leningrad where there's a difference in the pronunciation tradition. One thing that emerged to me from doing this really close work is there are some aspects of the cantillation, so that's the tradition of singing the text, which are very difficult to understand. So they don't seem to follow any rules. So if you look, there's a great book come out last year or the year before, which is an introduction to the Tiberian Masoretic accents. And I'm afraid I can't remember who wrote it. I haven't been back to the UK for 3 years because of COVID, so I haven't seen a copy either. But I have seen some snippets of it. It looks like a really good introduction. I've lost my train of thought actually. What was I talking about? What was I talking about?
The difference in the pronunciation of one of the cantillation marks.
The cantillation marks. Yeah, absolutely. So if you read those introductions or you read any of the classic works, so Wicks, I think, is still he's really excellent on this kind of stuff. And I relied a lot on him for this book. There's certain rules that have been identified on how the cantillation should operate, but there's places in the Psalms where the cantillation doesn't fit the rules. This is particularly in the titles, where you've got only like 3 words in a verse. How does that work? And after a lot of looking at it, I developed a couple of theories. So I've got a journal article which I've been cooking up now since completing the book, which I'm hoping to send off somewhere.
Can you give us a little tease, or is this still a little too early?
I don't. What is academic? What is academic?
You might just want to keep that to yourself. Yeah. No.
Well, the problem is if I give you a tease and then I'm completely wrong.
How about this?
I've misled your. Yeah, go on.
Whenever you finish your article, we'll have you on again. You can tell us about your.
There we go.
Theories.
Yeah, that's
what we'll do. We'll have you come back on. We'll do that.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. It's a very obscure little detail about some of the titles of the Psalms. Okay, I'll give you this. The conclusion was that I came to, which I think is inevitable, and again, I'm going to argue in the article why this is the case. There are times when it can be demonstrated the Masoretes didn't fully understand their own cantillation tradition, as in what the oral tradition they'd inherited. And yet they faithfully recorded it in what they wrote, which is quite remarkable. So but I'll release the article and I'll email you both afterwards.
Excellent.
Love it. Yeah,
it sounds fun.
Well, I think that was a real staple of your book, your appendix 2, in which you talk about the Te'amim and you go into great detail with it. I thought that was fantastic. It's very accessible. I know that different traditions exist, especially outside the Psalms and the Sifrei Emet, or the books of truth, as we talked about, or as you talk about in the book. But nevertheless, I thought it was fantastic, and I think it'd be really great in the classroom. I really do. I think this would be a great way to introduce students. So really to go right off of what you were just saying, all of that, to push the book, I think is really an excellent resource. And especially in your footnotes, you give other great resources that students can go to in order to understand the Te'amim better. So I kol hakavod lachem. I mean, congratulations to you all, because it's really fantastic work, So
thank you. Well, I'm actually using. I'm currently training up one of my PhD students in how to read the cantillation, because he's doing a PhD on the Psalms. He's a really, really sharp guy, but he's never been taught how to read the cantillation, because I think most students aren't taught how to read the cantillation.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And I think introductory books on the material is really good. And as I say, there's been some great material come out in the last couple of years on that. But I actually think the best thing, if you want to learn about something, is just read it. And that's part of the vision for this reader was what Jonathan and I wanted to do was to say, how do we just get people reading the text? How do we get them reading stuff that they wouldn't normally read? And how do we? Is there any way? I think this is my kind of first, full-on academic book that I've published, and my what we really wanted to do, Jonathan's done some great work with these other kind of like, Hebrew in 60 minutes, or he's done a lot of thinking about how to help people revive Hebrew or Greek and kind of get stuff up. And what I really wanted to do with the project was have kind of like, an iceberg kind of feeling. So you can read the text and it's laid out so it's easy to read. It's a reader.
Yeah.
But at the same time, within 2 minutes, hopefully the reader will see, oh my gosh, I'm being exposed here to a manuscript that I wouldn't see anywhere else in the world, in any other, so there's a whole depth that you can go down to if you want to. And I think that way, my hope is that many readers of the book would make use of it and excel just further on in their Hebrew ability and their appreciation of the Psalms as well.
Yeah, I would just piggyback on both of you. It's a very unique book. There are other readers out there that some people might be familiar with, whether it's for Greek New Testament or Septuagint or Hebrew Bible, but you're doing multiple things with this book. And I could, as a language person, I could not agree more with you. That was one of the things that can be lacking sometimes is we do excellent work with our great grammars, but we don't transition people at an early enough stage to say, let's just engage with the text. And the way you do it is that both the way you lay out the Hebrew is it makes it easier for people to engage the Hebrew in terms of how you divide up and structure the lines of each psalm. And you also give the information on the verbs and the words. But there's also a deep part to this iceberg you're alluding to, where one thing that's not talked about often, the cantillation marks, can seem overwhelming, but you present them in a way where we can just start engaging with that, along with the Aleppo Codex. I don't think I've ever seen anything that presents both codices, the differences right there in front of you, instead of having to compare manuscripts. So there's a lot that can be used for teachers here or people who are studying Hebrew themselves. And so whether they're starting out with just, hey, I'm not ready for cantillation marks yet, I'm just trying to approach the Hebrew, well, you present it in a really accessible way. Then once they're ready to dive in deeper, they can read your appendices and they can go back through the Psalms, read through them. One other thing I also liked about your book is you don't present those Psalms in chronological order. You put them into categories. And I think there's a really, in terms of, genre is so important for understanding Hebrew Bible, right? No matter what book you're looking at, but including the Psalms, we might think, oh, the Psalms is just songs or prayers, whatever, but there's more detail. I know we weren't planning on asking this, but I wonder if you can touch on it just a tad bit, how you decide to group your Psalms. And I think there's a good knowledge there.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. So this was one of those decisions that emerged from Jonathan and I talking together, I think. So when we first started talking about this idea, I really wanted to do a Psalter, as in the whole Psalter. That's what I wanted to do. And there's a certain type of personality of which I am, which always knows that we've not done every psalm, like that's always here. And maybe we might do in the future. I don't know if the book sells well. If the book sells well and people appreciate it, then Hendrickson, I think, will Hendrickson, please. they will allow us to do the whole Psalter, But it was already a bit of a punt for them, I think, because this was slightly different to what they've done before. There were quite a lot of new ideas that we were sharing, and so there were some restrictions on the size of the book and various other things. But those kind of restrictions, it's interesting working in this one world because there's some really clever people who work in the office there who are just like, realistically, we only have this many pages. This is how much we can put in. This is what we can do. And I was reflecting on it afterwards, thinking, oh, it's so annoying. It's so commercial. I'm a pure academic person. But I was reflecting afterwards, thinking those are exactly the kind of features that were, or restrictions that impacted people in the ancient world. Mark. Why is Mark so short? Well, maybe the book of Mark's so short is because he only had a certain amount of paper. So he was forced to kind of say, how do I shorten this material down? And when I thought of it like that, I thought, okay, now I feel happier because I'm part of this ancient long tradition of trying to do stuff, but the external limitations, kind of like have an impact. But as we did that, I think that resulted in some interesting creative decisions. So one thing we decided early on was we want a psalter that feels comfortable in the hand. And this is where Jonathan's just genius, so he decided on the dimensions of the book and that kind of stuff. So and he sat down with the typography guy, the typesetting guy at Hendrickson, whose name I can't remember. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of clever people have helped with this, and they're in the acknowledgements at the back. And they just sat down and they literally sat down together with their hands and just kind of said, if I'm going to put a book down and then I'm going to pick it up and it's next to my chair that I often read in, what size and shape do I want it to be that's going to encourage me to actually read the Psalms better, And that kind of attention to detail, I think was, again, we're forced to think about that because of economic reasons, because we only have a certain amount of space for a book like this, but it results in an interesting discussion. And there's lots of features in the book that come out because of that. So when we decided we can't do all the Psalms, we then said, okay, so in that case, we need to make a decision about what we include and why. And so he said, let's try and expose readers to the breadth of material in the Psalter, and let's try and do so in a way that will give them an on-ramp. Okay. So we've organized the book according to genres. So the different, themes and types of Psalms that exist, and they're kind of clustered together in that way. And then within each section, we try and start with easier Psalms, and then you build your way up to more difficult Psalms. So that gives you a number of different ways of approaching the material. So you could say, I'm just going to have a go at wisdom Psalms or Torah Psalms or real Psalms or Thanksgiving Psalms. And as I say these now, I can't remember what titles we gave the genres, so I apologize if I just give one that's not fine yet. And you could say, I'm going to have a go, and I'm going to read these 5 Psalms. And if you start at the beginning and work your way through, you'll find that they scale up in difficulty. Or you could say, I want to have a go at some easy Psalms. So I'll read the first Psalm of each section, and just kind of work my way through. So, we're trying to think about the reader's experience, and, how do we create a good experience for you, and how do we help you move from the Psalter being that kind of like that part of BHS where there's lines like put slightly above a line like this, so I was going with my PhD the other day. We were looking at BHS together. Actually, no, I was talking to someone who works in Bible translation here, and he said, what resources are there for reading things? And we looked at BHS together, and you've got a line that kind of goes to the end, and then there's a bit of a line underneath and a bit of a line over or whatever. It's really hard to follow through. So we just asked the question, how can we try and create an experience that makes it easier and sort of like more comfortable reading the Psalms? After all, that's how Psalm 1 begins. Yeah. So Psalm 1, the first mention there of reading the Bible, okay, in the Psalms, is it talks about it being a joyful experience. Okay. And so therefore that's how I try and teach Hebrew in my classes. That's how I try and teach reading, is I try and make it fun. So there's lots of jokes, usually at other people's expense, but that doesn't matter. Just try and make it, easy. And so in as much as we can, that's what we try to do with the book.
No, I absolutely love it. And, when I received it in the mail, I was thinking of something bigger actually, but when I got it, I thought, and as I began to read through it, I thought it's like a prayer book. Yeah. It feels like the common book of prayer or something, this is something I can open up and I can read and I can enjoy doing it, but it's just packed full of such great scholarship. It really helps the student get through. So I thank you, Hendrickson, for publishing this book, and thank you to the authors for actually writing it, because it's really great in that way. And I have no problem recommending this to students moving forward. That is for sure. So on that note, We wondered if you wouldn't mind taking us maybe through one of your favorite Psalms or just a few lines of one of your favorite Psalms from the book. Maybe read it in Hebrew and then give us a little English translation and talk about what you see in the poem.
Thanks.
Yeah.
No, I'm up for that. I thought about this and I thought I just want to do Psalm 1 for a whole bunch of reasons.
Good.
A whole bunch of reasons. One reason is before I came out to Ethiopia, I used to be I'm an ordained Anglican minister. So back in the UK, while I was doing my PhD, I was also doing minister stuff.
Wow.
You know,
Nice.
and sometimes I would I'd be with someone who has a different religious worldview to me, and it was an opportunity to kind of like, open the Bible and talk about what Jesus means to me and why he might be relevant to them. And very often I might go to Psalm 1. Okay, so this was one of those texts in the whole Bible that I would go to and talk with people. But also Psalm 1 is about reading. This is one reason it's the beginning of the Psalter. So it's kind of an advert for our book itself. So I thought
I like it.
You guys have done a great job though, so I don't need to supplement it, but so thanks for but no, the other reason is because Psalm 1 contains my one mistake that I made in the book. That's a joke, by the way. I'm sure there's others.
But we know this one is here. Yes, right.
Yeah, we know this one's here. But the reason the mistake is there is it's interesting because it's a really difficult. I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about as well, because I think it's quite an interesting and difficult problem, and I'm not happy with the solution I come up with. So anyway, let me read Psalm 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave short pauses in two different places. I'm going to leave pauses where the accent system, the cantillation system, tells you to leave a pause. But I'm also going to leave a short pause where there is what I have called a virtual disjunctive, a virtual pause. If you want to know more about that, that's in the appendix. Psalm 1. Ashrei ha'ish, asher lo halach, ba'atzat rasha'im, ובדרך חטאים לא עמד, ובמושב לצים לא ישב. כי אם בתורת אדוני חפצו, ובתורתו יגע יומם ולילה. והיה כעץ שתול על פלגי מים, אשר פריו ייתן בעיתו, ועליהו לא ייבול. וכל אשר יעשה יצליח. לא כן הרשעים, כי אם כמוץ, אשר תדפני, אשר תדפנו רוח, על כן לא יקומו רשעים במשפט, וחטאים בעדת צדיקים. כי יודע אדוני דרך צדיקים ודרך רשעים תאבד.
Wow, kol hakavod.
Yeah,
I apologize for misreading that. The irony there about that mistake is I confused a vav with a yod, which is one of the most common.
Correct. Let's say this is just a scribal error in the book. Actually,
it is right. Exactly.
It wasn't your reading. This was the book scribal error.
So yeah, that's So
a true scribe.
Yod and vav is one of the most common errors or common differences, I should say, in manuscripts. So there you go. I've just illustrated for you how that happens.
I have to say, I feel like you, in all seriousness though, I feel like you took me to a little campfire as you're reading this. It's really cool to hear the ebb and the flow and the tone as you read the psalm, and you talk about making reading fun. We feel it. It's just, I feel like we're at a professional storyteller who's giving us this first poem. anyway.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
very lovely.
When I've done youth camps before, then something I like to do, which is a little bit different, is teach the youth to sing the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. You know, and you get them to
That's
around.
That's
So
great. Yeah.
Hebrew works fantastically well around a campfire. I can encourage anyone. You know, if you're in youth work, why not learn the original
Yeah,
language?
why not? Yeah.
Yep.
So that's great. Yeah. All right. Let me. Can I say some things about this text?
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
You know, let me just go to some details, and then I'll come back and say some points of interpretation. Oh no, sorry. Let me translate it first. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
That's great.
So, okay. So verse 1, Ashrei Ha'ish, blessed is the man, or happy is the man. It's always interesting seeing what Jonathan's put down as the gloss for different things, you know. So blessed is the man, Asher hu lo halach, does not walk or has not walked, ba'atzat choshaim, in the counsel of the wicked ones, uvader chataim, but in the counsel of sinners, lo amad, he does not stand or has not stood, uvemoshav letzim, and in the dwelling place or the seat of mockers, he does not sit. Ki im betorat Adonai, and I've got something to say on this a bit later.
Okay.
But in the law of the Lord, cheftzo, is his delight. Okay, and this is, I think, really a key verse for the whole psalm. Uvetorato yegeh, and in his law, he meditates or mutters or something like that. Yomam v'layla, day and night. V'haya, and he will be ke'etz, as a tree, shatul ra'al palgei mayim, planted by streams of water, asher piryo, which its fruit, yeten be'ito, it will give in its time, v'alehu lo yibol, and its leaf will not wither, v'chol asher ya'aseh. Okay, and now I'm going to deviate slightly from the ESV, if you don't mind. And
Right.
all which it produces, yatzliach, will prosper. Lo chen harashaim, not so the wicked. Ki im kamotz, but like chaff. Asher tidfenu ruach, which the wind blows away. Al ken, therefore, lo yam kumu rashaim, the wicked will not stand. Bamishpat, in the judgment. The chataim, and the sinners, ba'adat tzadikim, in the council or the assembly of the righteous ones. And actually, there's something I noticed for the first time ever in this psalm because of Jonathan's gloss here, which delighted me a lot, and I'll say something about that in a moment. Ki yodea Adonai, for the Lord knows, derech tzadikim, the way of the righteous, the derech rashaim, but the way of the wicked ones, toved, will perish. So let me just hone in for a moment on verse 2. Okay, so this is the verse 2. Ki im betorat Adonai. Okay, this, I can't the number of times I've changed my mind on this, and it just drove me crazy. Okay, and what I have there is a compromise that I'm not happy with. Compromise is that's the nature of academia. You have to make judgment calls on things, and sometimes you just got to decide something which is kind of like a halfway house between things. The cantillation of this half verse is very, very well. Firstly, it breaks the rules because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 words, and they are all connected by conjunctive accents. You're not supposed to have a clause of more than 2 words connected by conjunctive accents. There's one particular part of a verse where that can happen, and we don't quite know how to further break it down. And that's after the middle point of a verse, before a certain type of disjunctive accent. You can find out more in the appendix. But other than there, nowhere else you're supposed to have more than 2 words connected together. And when you do have more than 2 words connected together, that's because the text should be split up in a certain way, but because of the rules of music, a disjunctive accent or more than one disjunctive accent has transformed into a conjunctive accent. Okay, so in English you see this, right? If you go to a West End show, so that's a London thing. It's a West End show, Broadway.
There you go.
If you go to a Broadway show and you listen to them sing, okay, if you stopped and thought about it, the way they're pronouncing words is ridiculous, okay, because they're pronouncing words in a certain way to make it sound nice in the way they sing, right? And you know, when you do that, you open your mouth back there so that you can ensure that the notes are carried on long vowels. Okay, I originally trained as an actor, so I learned all this stuff when I trained as an actor. And so you emphasize all of the vowels, not in a technical linguistic way, but you just make vowels long. So we see it in English already when we sing things, and the same thing happens in the Psalms sometimes, where you would logically, where the cantillation system wants to have a disjunctive, it transforms to a conjunctive. However, here, ki im betorat Adonai, the most logical place to have a disjunctive would be after im, okay? Because you want to say ki im betorat Adonai, okay?
Right.
And I think about 3 or 4 different times in my notes and between me and the typographer, we had ki im break betorat Adonai, okay? The problem is the rules of how the conjunctive system, of how the disjunctive system transforms to conjunctives, you cannot explain there being a break there at all after im. It doesn't make any sense. Why would there be one there? So the reason, what I think is going on here is there should be a small break after betorat. So if you listen again to my speaking of the text, I said ki im betorat Adonai, right? That would be the only way to make sense of it. There should be a dechi accent on betorat, and that would change before the gadol. Sorry, that would change before the revia. It's revia katan, which is the next accent. And in that case, then there would be another change that occurs before, or at the beginning of the clause. Okay, so if there was another disjunctive that occurred after ki, then it would be a legama, and that would weaken and become a conjunctive. So that's what would happen. The problem is that makes no sense to text whatsoever that I can see. I can't. It's just so kind of, you know. And so eventually I decided, okay, I'm just going to put in, I'm going to put in what looks to be like a legama that has become a conjunctive accent. So ki, okay, has transformed into simply a disjunctive. It's transformed into a conjunctive by losing the break of the legama. So I put that in, but I've not put any other breaks in that section. I'm not happy with this because what I have put in is definitely wrong. Whatever that clause on its own definitely doesn't work. But what it is a fudge between 2 different possible things, and eventually I decided that's the only thing I can put in. So this is one of those places where I actually have no idea what the right solution is. Okay,
I actually wonder. What comes to my mind as you're talking is when you think in a general sense, whenever things deviate from normal. Sometimes it can be a way of putting emphasis on something. Like, for example, in genealogies, whenever you find in some of these ancient genealogies, there's derivation from the typical someone begat someone, someone son of someone.
Yeah.
We randomly break out into poetry, we're emphasizing something.
Yeah.
And again, maybe there's just simply something weird going on, we don't know. But what are the chances that the one place in Psalm 1 where something would be deriving from normal behavior would be in with Ki'im b'Torat Adonai, would be in this specific phrase, but in the Torah of the Lord? So do you think there's potentially some intentionality going on here? Why maybe the Masoretes they're doing something that draws your attention to this particular phrase?
Well, that's a really good point. I think firstly to say, this isn't the Masoretes. This is them recording the oral tradition.
Okay.
On that, there's a couple of layers in terms of the answer, but before we get to your idea, which is a really good idea. The first point is to say, did the Masoretes correctly record what they inherited? So there may be places where they made mistakes.
But this goes back to your journal article, I guess, though, right?
Yes, that's right.
So
I'm not actually, my article, I'm not arguing that they made a mistake. I'm arguing they didn't understand what they were writing, but they recorded.
Correct. To my point, though, that they're so faithfully writing down, even when they don't understand.
That's right. Yeah.
Sure.
So assuming that they're faithful in this place.
Yeah.
Okay. The next point is, I mean, Pete Myers is, an eternal student, always making mistakes. This could be really obvious. It's just that I'm too much of an idiot at the moment to see how that's the case. And if you've done any studying of language, then that happens all the time.
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you see something like, this is really deep, this is kind of major, and then you go on your Facebook group and you put it up, and then someone goes, no, this is kind of obvious thing. It happens all the time. You're like, okay, right. We'll put it on the internet next time. So there's that second possibility. But then the third possibility is, there could be something interesting going on, and it could be drawing attention to something in the text. I take it that's what the singing does. It draws our attention to things. And I would invite, I give this to anyone who's watching. If you can find some way that I'm wrong, then, that's a short note in something. You can publish it. Or you could find some way that maybe I'm right, and actually you observe this really interesting exegetical point. And that's great, and that what I want to do is, the kind of things I want to publish are things that make other people discover things. That's I think the most exciting thing
that's good
about publication.
That's cool.
Is it's publication that pays forward in some way. And that's another reason why I thought I wanted to draw attention to this little detail. But in terms of just coming now to in terms of the Psalm, this is the most important verse of the Psalm. Okay, this is the thing that distinguishes the blessed man from those who are unblessed. And so maybe there's something there about the way in which that's introduced, with a pause in the middle of the conjunction. I don't know how that would function, but maybe there is. But anyway, this is what the Psalm's about. This is what the psalmist wants us to do. Wants us to enjoy the law of the Lord. And I think, looking forward to the Psalms, the compiler of the Psalms, redactor of the Psalms, or whatever label you want to use for that final form. The reason why the Psalm wants to do it here is because we're supposed to look forward and say, how do I enjoy? I want to enjoy the Psalter. Okay. In many respects, maybe this should have been at the beginning of our book, but it's done.
Well, this is excellent. Well, here's what I'm wondering. This has been a great conversation. We're almost coming up to our time. I think maybe we have time for maybe one more question, and then give you a moment to just specifically say, here's the book, here's what it is, here's who it's for. Natan, I'm thinking maybe question 8, getting a good ancient Near East question in there.
I like that. Yeah. Let's do that. So I like question 8 because what advice would you have, Pete, for early career scholars who are going into Hebrew Bible, ancient Near Eastern studies, young men, young women who are coming out of their academic journey, stepping out into what I say is the great beyond PhD work? What would be your advice, I suppose, for these students who might be listening, who are stepping into early career paths, if you will?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I realize I've not said anything about the thing I wanted to say about Psalm 1, which if you've got
Well,
distracted on the thing.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. You want to come back to that?
You-
You can do that.
Yeah,
Go
let's
ahead.
do it.
Is that okay? Is that okay? I just want to say
Yes.
one thing about verse 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
One thing about verse 3, which is that when you read it, the most natural kind of reading, I think, from a Westerner perspective, because we see this in English, is to say, and he will be like a tree planted by streams of water, which gives its fruit in its season, and its leaf will not wither, and all which he does will prosper.
And you go against the ESV. So let's hear about this here.
Yeah, well,
because that's what
no,
you said.
no,
Yeah.
the ESV, this is the thing. The ESV there, I don't think goes with the cantillation, because if you're switching from topic from the tree to the man, then you would expect the main division in the verse to be after will not wither. Yeah, so the first half of the verse is about the tree, and then the second half, and all which he does prospers, that would be about the man. So that would be where I'd expect the verse division to be. But the verse division is earlier. The verse division is at the end of by streams of water. So the cantillation suggests that the whole of the verse is about the tree. Here's my reflection on the theology of that. Here in East Africa, there's a really popular idea that if you are faithful and you do stuff, God will bless you. Okay? Like if you give enough money, God will bless you. And you can get, all sorts of things from that. And it's an idea which is pervasive and is really, it's horrible pastorally for so many people in churches. It's just, many people here are trapped in a desire to improve their situation. And they have this promise that if they give the pastor some money or they do whatever, then their situation is going to improve. And the problem is there seems to be lots of places in the Bible that would seem to affirm that kind of idea. But actually on closer inspection, on many of those places, that they don't teach a prosperity gospel quite in the same way. I don't think the end of verse 3, according to the cantillation, is saying all which he does will prosper. It's saying all which the tree produces will succeed. So what is it the tree's producing? It's producing fruit. Throughout the psalm, the psalmist or the blessed man does not live in a situation which is externally very positive. Everyone around him is wicked. Yeah, he doesn't walk with them, he doesn't sit with them, he doesn't kind of get involved. Instead, where is it that he's seen to be blessed? It's in the last verse 6, in this eschatological time when the righteous will be seen to be righteous. So his actual experience, this blessed man, his actual experience doesn't seem to be very positive necessarily at the time. But the fruit that a tree produces, what does it mean for the fruit to succeed in some way? Well, what's inside a fruit? It's more seed. So it's this idea that the things that you produce in response to whatever comes from you, which is drawn from this stream of water, and you can't see the connection between the stream and the tree because that's underground. That's it. That's invisible. That's the roots. The things that you produce go on to succeed and become fruitful trees themselves. I think that's the picture of verse 3. Now, you can say that my exegesis is incorrect and it should be man. That's fine. But I think my exegesis fits with what the cantillation says.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And that's another point where that's why we wanted to expose readers to the cantillation. They can make the decision themselves. You can say, okay, I disagree with that or I agree with that. But the point is, let's learn what the cantillation says and hear this ancient way of reading the text.
It's pretty amazing with that, with the Nikud, of course, with the cantillation marks, with the accents and all the like. We really have a running commentary here, don't we, on the consonantal text? And it's amazing to see how it was received by that, as an oral tradition put down upon the consonantal text. But in any case, as you're doing here, you're showing, and I think it's good for our listeners, a good teaching point, that when you're translating the Hebrew, you're hitting up against this, right? You're hitting up already against potential interpretive moves that have been made on what we have in the BHS or what we might have in the pointing of the Aleppo Codex, for example, of with the Leningrad and the Aleppo. So very nice teaching moment to see you read that very closely and give your interpretation, your exegesis, and show how it might be faithful actually to the marks themselves, going back to that tradition. So
I really like you. I really like your which I'm going to steal this for my teaching. A constant commentary on the text. That's what the cantillation. Yeah. In actual fact, there are there's an ancient system of pronunciation where some words have a kind of pausal vowel in them, so they're not the vowel you'd expect. A pausal system, and there's times when the pauses in those vowels don't fit necessarily the way that the text is broken up by the cantillation. So I mean, if you read the text really carefully, you see there's layers upon layers of ancient ways of understanding this text, and they're all faithfully recorded in this tradition, waiting for students to work out what they are.
How exciting!
And then decide between them. Yeah,
exactly.
What this book will do is, again, you're really illustrating why to go deeper. And I think, unfortunately, the reason some don't get into languages at all, or those who get into languages don't go to the cantillation level, is because, in my opinion, they're maybe never shown why. Why do we do this? So I'm really glad you gave that example in this psalm. Here's a real life example of engaging in the text at that level, how it impacts our understanding of the text, whether it's just simply the beauty of the flow, or if it impacts even interpretive elements based on the groupings of phrases and clauses. So I think that's phenomenal.
That's good.
Sorry, I interrupted you've got a plan for this, and
no, this is good. No, that was excellent. Yeah, no, I'm glad you went back to that, because I remembered you had made that comment and we didn't cover it. So I'm happy now to hear that there. So, and I like your interpretation there too. It's really nice. It connects well to what's coming in the New Testament, some of those ideas there too. So I really like that.
I think the Old Testament does. So
yes, exactly. So it does. So that last question we wanted to ask you, though, what advice might you have for early career scholars who are jumping into Hebrew Bible, ancient Near Eastern studies? They have their PhDs, and so what advice might you have? Yeah,
3 bits of advice, and they are all I think what the Old Testament teaches. Okay, the basic 3 things the Old Testament teaches, and you should apply them to yourselves, as I should apply it to myself. The first one is be converted. So if you're going to summarize the Old Testament, then there's this final prophet who came, who summarized the message of the Old Testament, and that was John the Baptist. And he said, repent of your sins, okay, and look for the coming of the Messiah. There he is. He's Jesus. I have many friends who are Jews, many friends who are Muslims, many friends who have no faith at all. I think the message of the Old Testament is that they should put their trust in Jesus. And there's many people who will, on the last day, they're going to see him and they're going to say, Lord, Lord, I have this amazing degree from Harvard. And he's going to say, go away, I didn't know you. So that's my first bit of advice, in all seriousness.
That's true.
I'm an Anglican priest.
Yeah.
I'm an Anglican priest. So. The second one is be humble. So the Old Testament is really amazing. The Hebrew Bible is really incredible in putting our personal lives in perspective. Yeah. That's what's going on in Isaiah's day. There's all these massive things going on around them. There's wars, and there's empires moving, and as we're speaking right now, there's a civil war continuing in Ethiopia, which is a very complicated situation. There's a war going on between Russia and Ukraine, as we're speaking right now.
Yeah.
And actually, the work that we do is contextualized by these things going on around us in 2 ways. Firstly, all of my huge internal issues over whether I'm good enough and whether I'm going to pass and whether my career is going to be okay or whatever, just put that in perspective. Okay, so there's something bigger going on.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
But the second thing is to say that there is a purpose why we study these ancient texts, and there is a purpose why you have studied this ancient text, because humanity's been dealing with these same problems. Putin is not the first Putin. You know, Boris Johnson's not the first Boris Johnson. Biden's not the first Biden. These guys are just the same sorts of leaders who've been around for thousands of years, and you have something to contribute. Okay, so be converted, be humble. Okay, put things in perspective in that way. And the third thing is be yourself. Okay, and what I mean by that is that the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, is huge on this. There's a God who's in charge, and he knows what he's doing, and he has a reason why he's made you study you know, scribal errors in Akkadian, you know, scribal errors in Akkadian records of women standing on their heads and whatever it is.
Exactly.
And so there's a particular thing that you can contribute. But it's not just about the work that you've done. It's also about who you are and the whole shaping of you as a person. And I think that you know, there's, as you throughout you know, as you do a PhD, your early career, all that kind of stuff, there's this huge scrabble for like, what am I going to do next? You know, and there's all these PhDs around, and there's all these, you know, and there's not as many jobs, and that you could be really nervous. But there is a particular path that you have. Okay, this is my religious belief. There's a particular path that you have, and one of the ways of discerning, you know, what's the best way to move forward is to say, what can I do to contribute and make the world better that no one else can do? What's the particular thing? So anyone can go teach at such and such a place or whatever, but where can I teach that no one else can teach? Or what can I do that no one else can do? Or what country could I go to that no one else could go to? You know, I think in Ethiopia, I've just had loads of problems, you know, so many problems all the time. We've been in constant conflict since we arrived. You know, we've had just issue after issue after issue. It's been so discouraging. But what I've discovered is that me and my wife, and we as a family, we're really good at just keeping going when there's every reason to quit. And for that reason, we're particularly suited for, you know, serving the academic world in this particular place. Now, there's other people who will be particularly suited for serving the academic world in whatever problem there is in Guatemala or like wherever it is. And so what is the particular way that you can contribute, which is that most of the people can't do so? And that's probably what, you know, the God of the Old Testament has equipped you for, and the path he wants you to walk down. So be converted, be humble, and be yourself.
Oh,
love it.
That's so good. This is such a great, encouraging.
Amen. Good preaching. Yeah.
Yes. That's good. I tell you what, this has been wonderful, Pete. I wonder, we've loved having you on. What I would love for us to end on is now, if you can just tell us what, just, I guess, more in brief, your pitch. What is this book? Where can we find it? And that kind of stuff.
Okay, this book is a reader for the Psalms. It's for anyone who has Hebrew at any level. If you want to read the Psalms, if you want to be exposed to aspects of reading you've not been exposed to before, and if you want to read the Psalms devotionally, or just build up a habit of reading, you know, ancient Hebrew poetry, then this Psalms book is for you. Probably you need at least a year of Hebrew under your belt before you start, but hopefully it'll be accessible to those who did Hebrew 10 years ago and you've not picked it up since. You know, you'll be able to kind of get going with it.
Excellent. Well, we'll put links in the show notes for people to be able to find this wonderful resource. And Pete, Natan, and I have really enjoyed getting to talk with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. I've really enjoyed being here. Great questions. Thanks for your patience with me. So that's great.
you.